So, we've entered another decade, and it's a change that I don't know if I was ready for. I don't know if anybody was ready for it. By this year, where I was living in Lancaster, Ohio, vinyl wasn't available anymore. The two local stores, Record Town and National Record Mart, were carrying exclusively CDs. So I had to do some thinking and realized I would have to make this show change with the times. It was a special year. There were some great years, and a lot of different types of music would start to invade my tastes. By this point, I was approaching 30. I was going to turn 27, and a lot of interesting things were happening. So I invite you to come check out the top 10 albums of that year. I've done one thing I haven't done in a previous year. We'll talk about that when we get there. But can't be just about vinyl anymore. It's got to be about music rather than vinyl. Because the times they were a-changing. The year was 1990. I'm T.C. Kirkham. This is Not Just Vinyl Recall. Hey VC, TC Kirkham, TKR Radio Central and the Kirkham Report. Glad you could join me for this inaugural edition of Season 2, now titled Not Just Vinyl Recall, because there's a lot of stuff I don't have on vinyl after 1990, and I've picked up a few here and there since becoming a part of the VC, but most of my music post-1987 or so is on CD. Some of it's even on cassette, not much, mostly singles. And I don't have those are in storage. But 1990, I think people are going to blow their minds with this because my musical tastes were all over the frickin' road. And a lot of this stuff comes from the latter half of 1990 rather than the beginning of 1990. But they're all good things. And at least in my book. Now, there's some stuff on here that people are going to go like, what the hell, TC? Well, I like everything. I'm the OG pop guy. I like rock, I like pop, I like dance, I like EDM, I like some country, I like R&B. About the only thing I have no tolerance for is really hardcore hip-hop, opera, and really hardcore old school country stuff from like the 50s before that. Everything else I will find a place for. And it's all over the road. Now, because this show is now shifted to mostly CDs, and because I haven't finished setting up my revamped office yet, I still don't have access to my CDs, so we're going to use Magic Box, at least for this show, maybe next week, but I should have everything in place by 92, I would think. A lot of great stuff. You're going to see me looking at my notes here and the notes for each of the songs, each of the albums, because I have to look them up. You know, I don't really have a choice. Let's start with number 10. From 1987 to 1990, radio was dominated by teeny pop. That's what I came to call it. The teen artists had taken over again. There was New Kids on the Block. There was Debbie Gibson, Tiffany, Glenn Medeiros, Tommy Page, 10 or 11, I'm sure I'm forgetting. So, in the spring of 1990, the suits at NBC decided, hey, you know, we had big success with the Monkees after the Beatles came out. Why can't we do that with a boy band, too? Well, needless to say, they apparently weren't watching when New Monkeys fell flat on its face in 87. But in the fall of 1990, NBC debuted a new Saturday morning program that was geared at the teen set. It was supposed to be a group of 5 guys, a boy band, for lack of a better term, living together in this like clubhouse, or at least staying together in this clubhouse. And it was a sketch comedy show with music and comedy and all kinds of different stuff. And they put together a group of 5 actors who were also singers and songwriters in some cases, all of them in their late teens or early 20s. And they produced one of the best pop albums of the decade, let alone 1990. It's a shame they don't get the attention they used to. The show was way too hip for the room. It was funny as hell. It was a great music. And 5 really personable guys in the leads. And the show and the album and the group were Guys Next Door, number 10. I became positively obsessed with this show for a while. The show, which aired on Saturday mornings at 11:30 after Saved by the Bell, which had premiered the year before, it was kind of like Saturday Night Live in many ways. It was the 5 guys the group was made up of Patrick Dancy, Eddie Garcia, Damon Sharp, Chris Wolf, and Bobby Leslie. They were Guys Next Door. They were to New Kids what the Monkees were to the Beatles. The album they produced was pure pop fun. They never had a top 40 hit, but they came close with the second single, I've Been Waiting for You, which peaked at number 42. And I found the whole album to be really, really good. I Was Made for You was the first single. Telephone Talking and Magic Night were both hits on the Kirkham Report. Magic Night, in fact, hit number 1 on the Kirkham Report. I really loved this show. Now, thankfully, some people have managed to put some of it online. And the guys are mostly still in touch. They had a great reunion in 2021? No, it was before the pandemic. They had maybe it was 2016. The guys, 4 of the guys got back together. They had it was similar to the New Monkees reunion also. Patrick, Eddie, Chris, and Damon were all there. Bobby Leslie pretty much dropped off the face of the earth. I've heard he does music, still in music, and he's living in Florida. That's all I've heard. Chris Wolf kind of dropped out of the scene, but Patrick and Eddie are both working actors. Damon Sharp has become a Grammy Award-winning producer and songwriter. The album was great, and if you like teeny pop and boy band music, it's superior to half the stuff that's out now. Number 10 for 1990, Guys Next Door by Guys Next Door. Number 9, let's move up. This was Kim's influence, although I really didn't know her that well at the time. We only met in the summer of 1990, so it's I didn't really know her yet, and I hadn't met her until 1992. But one of the acts that I really fell in love with hard, thanks to MTV, was a band that I would later find out was one of Kim's favorites. She'd seen them several times, been to a couple of autograph sessions, and they would break huge in 91 with the 3rd single from the album. But the album came out in 1990. And even though a lot of people poo-poo them, and some, Frank Landry a couple weeks ago actually denied they were heavy metal, even though their class is heavy metal. They're not really hair metal because they don't have the high hair. But I agree, they're more of a pop metal, hard rock format than they are metal. And that's because they do music a little bit differently. A lot of the lyrics are very, I hate to say it this way, the lyrics that they write are looking at the world around them rather than just sex and drugs and rock and roll like so many other bands like Guns N' Roses and such, and romance. Not that they aren't capable of it, they are, but there's a lot of great stuff there. The album, which I would find in 1991, I didn't get it till the third single took off, was actually released in 1990. So I'm going to include it there because I played it so much. At the time, I was working third shift at a local convenience store. I could play whatever I wanted to, and this CD got cranked up, and so did their third one when it came out in 92 or 93. They were just great, and they always will be great. Number 9 for 1990, Porno Graffiti 2 by Extreme. Or actually, it's Extreme 2 Porno Graffiti is the technical title. The album included the first 2 singles, which didn't do that well, Decadence Dance and Get the Funk Out. Then More Than Words came out, the ballad. It blew their image completely because it's such a ballady song, but it was a number 1 hit, followed by Wholehearted, a re-release of Get the Funk Out and Song for Love as singles. It's nice to see that they still continue to do music here and there. They had a new album come out last year. And of course, Nuno Bettencourt, guitarist Nuno Bettencourt, is a legend in the industry. He continues to be one of the top session musicians, songwriters, producers in the Boston area. Gary Sharon, I had the pleasure of meeting once. He came into Tape World when I was working for Transworld. He came in one night when I was there, met him. He was a wicked funny and very sweet man. And he was just looking for tapes, and we helped him out. It was fun. The band's music is all over the road. You have the ballad More Than Words, which is still what they're best known for. But I actually like the harder edge stuff. I love Get the Funk Out, which is one of my favorite songs by them. And Wholehearted, a great broken up love song. The whole album is great. Kim is a huge fan, and it's because of her that I became such a huge fan. But the album is terrific, and if you don't know it, you should listen to it. Extreme 2 Porno Graffiti, number 9 for 1990. Okay, number 8 is A Cheater. I did not really think about this when I put it on the list, but as I was doing the research for this, I did realize and notice that it's technically a compilation album. It only has 3 new tracks on it. But I'll be honest, I put it on the list anyway because it was my introduction to this man. I knew who he was. Everybody's heard the name by that point. But I wasn't really sure. You know, there's certain artists that you look at when they're on TV or you hear their name, and you kind of sneer at them. Most of the as seen on TV acts were like that. Slim Whitman, Boxcar Willie, Zamfir. This guy had that kind of reputation too. But when I saw him interviewed on Entertainment Tonight, promoting this album, I heard the first part of the first song, and I'm like, I really want that. I picked it up at my next paycheck. It made me an enormous fan of the guy. I will always remain a fan of his. He is, again, I've said on previous shows, 3 things get me for sure. Good guitar, good saxophone, and good keyboards. Those things I gravitate toward. He is the latter. And I adore this album. It's my favorite album by him. It has all of his earlier stuff on it. It has several, new tracks on it. And it opened my eyes even further to the world I was already exploring in New Age music. I had started that in the mid-'80s with Andreas Wallenweiter, and it was expanding beyond that by this point. And this man became front and center. Number 8, Reflections of Passion by Yanni. Yanni is an amazing performer. If you've seen the Live at the Acropolis show, then you know he has a way of holding a crowd in his hand. His keyboard skills are, bar none, one of the best on the planet ever. And Reflections of Passion, the title track, is my favorite song by him, I think. There's several others that are good, but Swept Away was the single. But he did chart on the Kirkham Report several times after I started listening to him. I still listen to this album regularly. I love it. And it's just amazing what he does. And the sound and the feel and the vibe never cease to put a smile on my face, calm me down if I'm tense. New Age music works wonders that way. Number 8 on my list for 1990, the compilation album Reflections of Passion by Yanni. That's not what I wanted. Number 7, 1990. I think this is a given. If you were around in 1990 and you didn't hear something by this woman, you probably were not listening to any kind of pop or rock radio station. You were probably listening to country or R&B, and even she even invaded over there. It is quite possibly one of the best debut albums of all time, and I mean, that first single made me a fan. Now, in later years, I've kind of gotten bored with her. I liked the first 3 or 4 albums, and then I stopped buying them, except for certain tracks. But this first album still remains one of my favorite albums, and it's definitely my favorite album by her. Or second favorite. The second album was great, too. An incredible vocalist, incredible range, and when she took the world, she took it by storm. And she deserved to. She'd only had a couple of minor gigs under her belt at the time. Boy, I don't think anybody really knew what was going to happen with her until they actually heard it. Number 7 on my list from 1990, Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey. Mariah was, I think, 21 when this album came out. She may have been 22 or 20. Monster hits, Vision of Love, one of the greatest songs I've ever heard, ever. Love Takes Time, Someday, I Don't Want to Cry, and There's Got to Be a Way were the singles. She was 21 when this came out, yeah. What a fantastic debut album. Now, this is one of the areas where Kim and I differ. Kim's not a particularly big Mariah Carey fan. It's not her kind of music. She leans toward the heavier stuff. And yet she's a Taylor Swift fan who I can't stand. So there is the differences between us, but she does have certain... Mariah's even gotten in... Kim does like her version of Hero and does like I'll Be There, which came from later stuff. But she has a voice that you can't forget once you've heard it. And it's just out there. It hasn't changed as she's gotten older. It's my tastes have changed. And I think somewhat... she did so much good stuff in the early years that it kind of got hard to keep up with that. I love her cover of Def Leppard's Bringing on the Heartbreak, which I think came out on the... I bought the album last year. Wildflower, Sunflower, something like that was the title. I love her version of that. And I like, songs here and there still by her, but not everything, like I did those first 2 albums. And this album got played constantly in 1990. Number 7, Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey. All right, I need a drink. And we're going to go to number 6. And what can I say? I like everything. I've discussed in depth, particularly on influencers, about my love for Latin music. I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak a word of Spanish. Not that I haven't tried over the years. Excuse me, I gotta wipe my eye. Something's in it. I have tried over the years a couple of times to learn Spanish. A little bit of Spanish, at least. does not like my little gray cells. But the music that comes out of it is awesome. And I became a rabid fan of Menudo in the 1980s. And I'd seen a lot about this gentleman in Billboard and other magazines throughout the latter half of the 80s. And I picked up a greatest hits kind of compilation of his on tape for $4.99 in early 1990. It had come out in 87, I think, because it included his cover of Eras 2 on it, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. And fell in love with his voice so much that I would buy the next 8 albums by the gentleman. I don't understand a word he's singing. I mean, I've looked up the translations, but that voice is incredible. And in 1990, he hit #1 on the Kirkham Report chart not once, but twice. First with that cover of Eras 2, and then with the first single from this album. #6, 20 Años by Luis Miguel. This was Luis's 7th album. He had just turned 20 at the time this came out. He became a star when he was like 12 or 13. Intagate hit #1. I think that's how it's pronounced on my chart. I love this man's voice. It's an incredible, to this day, I love this man. I haven't purchased anything over the last maybe 20 years. Most of what I got was from the 1990s. But I could listen to him sing the phone book and I wouldn't have a problem with it. I could listen to him singing in Klingon and I wouldn't have a problem with it. That voice is amazing. And ironically, he dated Mariah Carey for a number of years. He did have one hit on the Kirkham Report that was partially in English, a song called America, America, which came from a live EP in 1992, I think it was. For some reason, he's never made the jump to American audiences in English language full-time, because he speaks fluent English. But I just can't get enough of that voice. This is my favorite album by him. It's the only one you're going to see pop up on these, I think. And I adore that single. I've shown the videos popped up on my flashback tracks. And the song itself is great. And he continued to open my worlds of Latin music to where I still buy a lot of different Latin artists, even though I don't speak the language, because I love the sound, I love the vibe, I love the vocals. And Menudo started it and he cemented it. #6 for 1990, 20 Años by Luis Miguel. #5, I had heard of this gentleman 2 or 3 years prior, and although I do enjoy Christian music, and I am a Christian, I don't listen to a lot of it. I didn't listen to a lot of it at the time. I had a few albums. I have some Benny Hester, and I have some early Amy Grant, and I have some Whiteheart and some Petra in my collection. I like those. This gentleman was becoming a major superstar in the contemporary Christian field. And I wasn't really that aware of him until this album came out. I had heard a song. I had seen it on the music video show that ran on our local religious television channel. I just flipped by it one day looking for a different act, and I found both of them on there. That song was from his album Eye to Eye, which was called Secret Ambition, one of my favorite songs by him. This album, which was his first that was actually intended to be a crossover success, blew my mind. The following album would be even bigger, and it'll probably show up on my 92 list. I don't know. But I love this album. I love him. I have a ton of his music now. I had the pleasure of seeing him in concert. He was an amazing performer. And this album started my love affair with him. #5, Go West, Young Man by Michael W. Smith. This album featured Place in This World, his first top 40 pop hit, peaked at number 6 on the pop chart. And that's where I first really got to know him. And I ended up buying the album because I loved the single so much. And then we got tickets to see him because the opening act was who I went to see. DC Talk was his opening act, and I went to see them. But his concert was magnificent too and made me a solid fan. The album also has the title track, How Long Will Be Too Long, Cross My Heart, were pretty big hits. He recorded Nick Kershaw's For You. Lot of great stuff on this album. He's an amazing performer, and if you are not familiar with him outside of the contemporary Christian sound, go West End Man, Change Your World, both of those, plus the Greatest Hits album, The First Decade, which is a mix of everything. Really show off that he's capable of more than just one format. He can do everything. I continue to love his music. He continues to hit the chart every now and then with different releases on my chart. And I really can't say enough about him because for the next 2 or 3 years, I was a huge fan and was listening to these albums entirely over and over again. Like I said, I worked third shift. I didn't have much else to do. Number 5 for 1990. Go West End Man, Michael W. Smith. Number 4 is an album that nobody's going to be able to find. This is an album that came out on a small label. They sold about 250,000 copies. It was a big seller, but the album went belly up about 4 months into the album's release, and the label. I mean, so it's difficult to find. I love this album. At the time, I was doing a bunch of fan fiction writing. I usually had beautiful music stations on in the background when I was, or new age music, when I was writing, because it helped me think. When my go-to station, WBNS FM in downtown Columbus, Ohio, suddenly became the new oldies, I was pissed. And I sought out something else, and I found another radio station that was a mix of new age, old style, beautiful music, and light vocals that I fell in love with. That was the FM station from WHIZ in Zanesville, Ohio. And I found a number of artists, 2 of them are on this list, on that channel for the first time. This was one of them. I heard the song one day while I was writing. And of course, it was your typical beautiful music station, so they never told you who did the songs. And at the time, I had I had just joined Prodigy, and I had, I did some searching, couldn't find it. Finally, I got so frustrated, I called the radio station, and I said, listen, I am a regular listener of your channel. You guys are playing this song. I need to know who does it because I want this album. And they laughed, and they took a second, and they came back and said, it's by this act, and it's on this label, blah, 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 and thank you for listening. I was out at Record Town less than an hour later picking this album up. And oh my God, I have listened to it and listened to it and listened to it. And I feel badly because I think the whole album is on YouTube. You can find it. If it is, I'll link it in the show notes. But I love this album. And if you're a new age person and you don't like this album, I can't imagine that. This album is amazing because it's this ethereal, wonderful ethereal music with these incredibly beautiful vocals. And on one track, George Winston plays the piano. I cannot speak as to how much I love this, obviously. It is number 4 on my list for 1990. The album is called Blue Solitaire, and it is by The Telling. The Telling was husband and wife duo Sherry and Dawn Francis. And the song I was nuts for is Guardian Angel. It's the second track on the album. It's the one WHIZ was playing. But the rest of the album I mean, I didn't know whether to expect something similar or not. I mean, this album blew my mind. When I listened to it the first time, I was like, holy cripe, why is this not huge? Um, Blue Solitaire, Guardian Angel, and Mile of Broken Stone and Wind Without Walls are my favorite songs, but the whole album is incredible. And Sherry has a very Sarah McLachlan style to her voice, and Dawn's keyboards and instrumentation would be what I would call a cross between the ultralight George Winston and the semi-light David Benoit or Benoit. I don't know how he pronounces his last name. um, and a little bit of Yanni thrown in. I love this album. If you're a New Age fan and you haven't heard it, seek it out because I think it's on YouTube. I know Last FM has two of the songs. They have Guardian Angel and Blue Solitaire. It might be on Spotify. I've never looked. I don't need to. I have it ripped. I can listen to it whenever I want to. Number 4 for 1990, the exquisite and hard to find Blue Solitaire by The Telling. Another artist I found thanks to WHIZ FM was this lady, and she has been one of my favorites ever since. The first single was a genuine, this is her second album, the first single off the second album was a genuine pop hit. She'd had one minor pop hit off the first album, but I had been unfamiliar with because nobody played it in the Columbus market that I listened to, Columbus, Ohio market. This album, this song actually got airplay, not just on WHIZ, but on WNBQ, I think it was, Mount Vernon station, and a couple of the lighter Columbus stations were playing it. It hit top 20 AC and top Hot 100 on, I don't think it hit the top 40, I might be wrong. And it doesn't say here, I don't think. Let me check. Nope, just the album. Her music is a style of music that's very eclectic. It's a mix of pop, jazz, blues, and I don't know how else to describe her. She has taken great periods of time off over the years. She took a great deal of time off after the passing of her mother, and then she took some more time off just because she was tired of it. She has made triumphant returns to music, but I love the Broadway album also, which came out in 95 or 96. But this album, again, was one of those albums I bought because of the single and played it constantly. At least this one's more familiar than The Telling. Number 3, London, Warsaw, New York by Basia. Woman has an incredible voice. Basia is just, the earlier album, Time and Tide, did produce the title single, which was a hit. This album produced Cruisin' for Bruisin', which was a #1 hit on the Kirkham Report. Also, Baby You're Mine, her great cover of Until You Come Back to Me, Best Friends, Brave New Hope. Those are my favorite songs. I love her voice. Again, it's the voice. I wouldn't even attempt to pronounce her last name. She doesn't use it for a reason. I'm looking at it right now and going like, I don't even want to attempt it because I don't want to insult her. She is Polish. She was born in Warsaw. That's what that title means. And she's just phenomenal. All of her 90s, 80s, and 90s stuff I've not picked up a couple of the more recent discs because they've been hard to find. They're independently released, most of them. She's an amazing singer, and I would love to see her in concert. I've never had that opportunity. The people who got to see that Basia on Broadway show are so damn lucky. I love that album. I don't do live albums very much. That one I love. If you're not familiar with Basia, definitely check her out. She's an incredible singer, and this album is top notch. Number 3 for 1990, London, Warsaw, New York by Basia. Okay, you can laugh at me again. I know you guys like to laugh at me, but I don't really care if you laugh at me about this, because some people consider the videos now a little bit goofy. They are goofy, but they're the product of the 1990s. And the music has never stopped. They continue to perform hundreds of dates a year around the world. They do several different shows, stuff they did with their band, stuff they did acoustically, a tribute show to their father. They do, and country music also. They do a little bit of everything now. This was the debut album that set the world on fire and gave them a #1 hit on their 24th birthday. And they are still one of just a few handful of twins that have ever made #1. They got the shaft by their label, and only this album was a major success, even though they've done tons of great stuff other than that. But this album is filled with great hair metal pop, and I love it. Number 2, After the Rain by Nelson. Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, the late Joey Cathcart, Bobby Rock, Paul Merkovich, and Brett Garsed made up the band. And, it's right here in front of me. They were terrific, and they hit #1 with Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection. They had big hits with After the Rain, Only Time Will Tell, and More Than Ever. And then Geffen just kind of screwed them over. They refused the second album, which they later released on their own in the late 90s, called Imaginator. The second album that was released, Because They Can, came out way later, 1995, and their momentum was gone. But it's a great album. After the Rain is one of those albums that you look back at the videos, particularly the video for After the Rain, but also Love and Affection, the beginning of Love and Affection, and you realize how cheesy the music looked. But if you listen to the song without looking at the video, it still holds up. These two guys in their 20s, the long blonde hair, it was just kind of crazy. Now, the truth be told, I'd been waiting for this album for 5 years before this. I first saw Nelson on a show called America. I don't remember if you guys remember America. It was a syndicated daily talk show hosted by Sarah Purcell and Stuart Damon in the fall of 1985. It only lasted 13 weeks, but they made their television debut on that show. They would also later appear on Saturday Night Live, both times as the Nelsons, before they became just Nelson. So I'd been waiting for them for a while when this album came out. And I'm rabid fans of them. I've met them. They are nice guys. We saw an exclusive acoustic show at the House of Blues. I've seen them in concert with the band. They're fantastic, and the music is fantastic. And yes, you can go poo-poo me if you want, because I know serious hair metal fans are probably not into their music, but I enjoy it. Number 2, After the Rain, Nelson. Number 1 for 1990 is an album that I would have put on. I just did the Influencers 10 albums that changed my life. This was one of them. I would talk about it later, but I was doing only vinyl, and I don't have this on vinyl. I never expected to get sucked into these guys' music when I did. And I never expected to become such a rabid fan. And I remain a rabid fan to all of their solo stuff as well as the band, which technically went on sort of hiatus in 2000, but they've continued to perform together every now and then. They're still friends. It wasn't a bitter breakup or anything, but they've all taken separate careers too and had monster success with it. This album should have been a pop smash. There were two reasons why it didn't click on the pop chart. Radio was not ready to get behind hip-hop in a big way. And yes, this is a hip-hop album. And B, radio wouldn't touch contemporary Christian music. Now, I don't know why there is this problem with radio, because in the early 70s, just a couple of decades before, thanks to the success of Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell, there was God-centered music all over the charts. There was Oh Happy Day by Edwin Hawkins Singers. There were songs from each of those Broadway shows and later movies. There was Put Your Hand in the Hand by Ocean, Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. All of these were religious-oriented hits. By the 1990s, radio wouldn't touch anything that had anything to do with religion. And that sucked, because this album has so much in it and had one song that should have been a monster across the board. I will never forgive radio for that, and I have never forgiven radio since. The number one album of 1990 in my book is New Thang by DC Talk. This album was groundbreaking. It was, up to that point, the biggest selling contemporary Christian album of all time. It would later be surpassed by Free at Last and Jesus Freak, the next two albums. It produced some great stuff, including the title track, New Thang, which has been out and has been sampled all over the place. I Love Rat Music, which explains their love for rap music. And an anthem that should have been a number one Hot 100 hit, Walls. Walls is an anti-racism song that takes its cue from the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. And it is an amazing song. The problem was, number one, it was never released as a single. It was released as a music video. And as I said, radio was not able yet to get behind hip-hop in a big way, and they kind of kicked themselves in the nuts that way with Vanilla Ice earlier in the year, and they weren't ready to get behind such a strong, powerful song. Walls was a number one smash on the Kirkham Report. It spent 3 weeks at number one, their first number one, and would be, I think, the number two song of the year. It was and is one of the most powerful songs ever written, and Kevin Mac Smith, Michael Tate, Toby McKeegan, they are three of the best songwriters, singers, performers, producers ever. And I'm not talking just pop music. I'm not talking just contemporary Christian music. I am talking all music. I will love the three of them and everything they do until the day I die. They are so good. I had the great fortune to see them in concert with Michael W. Smith. I didn't have great seats, but man, they put on a great show. And it was kind of a co-headlining tour, so they did a little over an hour. And all of the stuff from their first three albums was there. And I had picked up that first album on a whim after seeing an ad from DC in Billboard, which it came out in '89. I got it on cassette, and I liked it. But when this hit, and I picked it up and I listened to it, there was no going back. I have been, and always will be one of DC Talk's most rabid fans. And this album is why. My number one album of 1990, New Thang by DC Talk. Shall we run them up again? Number 10, Guys Next Door by Guys Next Door. Number 9, Extreme 2, Pornograffiti by Extreme. Number 8, Reflections of Passion by Yanni. Number 7, Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey. Number 6, 20 Anos by Luis Miguel. Number 5, Go West Young Man by Michael W. Smith. Number 4, Blue Solitaire by The Telling. Number 3, London, Warsaw, New York by Basquiat. Number 2, After the Rain by Nelson. And number 1, New Thang by DC Talk. I hope you guys, if you haven't heard of some of these acts, I hope you'll check them out. I really adore these. There were some runner-ups. There were some good runner-ups that year. Some of the albums I had on my short list that didn't make the list were Step by Step by New Kids on the Block. I know. Shut up. Never. Place of Glory, John Bon Jovi. Cherry Pie by Warrant. I'm Your Baby Tonight, Whitney Houston. And The Simpsons Sing the Blues by The Simpsons, which was a great album of comedy and fun music. But those 10, all of which I listen to regularly, even now, are things I love. And they're songs that are, unfortunately, most of which came out mostly on CD. I think of all of these, I know After the Rain got a vinyl release. I know Mariah Carey and Extreme also got a vinyl release. I'm not sure about the rest of them. They may not have. I know Guys Next Door did not, and I'm pretty sure The Telling did not, but the rest of them I'm not sure of. So we'll do this again in a week with 1991. Hopefully I'll have my CDs out by then. I won't have to do all Magic Box, but as you can see, as I get older, I get more and more passionate about stuff sometimes, and I'm very passionate about so many of these albums, and I want you to hear them. If you've never heard Basia, if you've never really heard DC Talk, or The Telling, or Luis Miguel, or Yanni, find these albums. I will turn you into a fan. I will. That simple. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And if you have, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Please share this out to your friends if they like this kind of music and would be interested in my picks for 1990. And of course, leave a comment. Without a comment, I don't know how I'm doing. I need you to tell me. Lots more coming up on TKR Video Central and other places, including TKR Mixcloud and a few other things. I'll have a full schedule up in a couple of weeks as everything finally falls into place. But until then, I'm getting my regular shows back in order, and I hope you'll be here to see them. And I'll be right back here again next Wednesday with another edition of Not Just Vinyl Recall. I'm TC Kirkham, TKR Video Central. I'll see you on the interwebs. Ciao, baby.